I wrote a piece at LouisianaSports.net. It's been up there for a couple of hours there on the front page about the Pro Football Focus grades for the season for LSU. Every single Sunday after the games, I would write about those grades and who graded the highest, who graded the lowest. But the grades roll for the entire season. So I wanted to take them in their entirety and put together top 5 and bottom 5 for LSU. So I did that up on the site today. In the top 5, you've got, 3 offensive players and 2 defensive players. I'll let you kind of marinate on that, who you think probably graded out the highest on LSU's team. And the top grade was an 83.5, which is a very, very strong grade, and it was on the offense. It was quarterback Garrett Nussmeier, highest graded player on LSU's team this season. His grade was 75 or better in 6 games. He never dipped below 60, and you can probably guess the 2 games he graded out the lowest. They were actually both a 60.5 against Texas A&M and Alabama. I would suggest, I don't have this information, his grade in the first half against Texas A&M was pretty good because LSU had moved the ball up and down the field. They did have to settle for a couple of field goals, but they did look like they were kind of in control, and then he turned the ball over far too much in the second half, took some sacks. It was not good, but he was good just about all year, threw for more than 4,000 yards. And his highest grade of the season was actually the bowl game against Baylor, where I thought he was sensational. If you listened to me or read anything I wrote up at the site after that game, I was just like, look, that was a patchwork offense that had offensive linemen moving all over the place, didn't have its best pass catchers, but the quarterback was just damn good. And he was really good all year long. He was the highest graded player on LSU's team. And I would tell you that if LSU is going to be a championship contender next year, that's going to have to be more of the same from the signal caller, Garrett Nussmeier. Really good first year for me as the starting quarterback. For Garrett Nussmeier, 83.5, highest grade of the players graded on Pro Football Focus. Second best grade, not going to be a surprise here either. Defensive player, guy that was probably the most impactful on defense all year. If you're thinking Whit Weeks, not a terrible guess. It's actually Bradyn Swinson. Swinson graded out at an 83 for the season. He blossomed into the best pass rusher that LSU had. His season-long pass rush grade was an 88.6. I can't tell you all how good that is. Like 88, there are not grades in the 90s on Pro Football Focus. It's very, very, very rare. But an 88.6 for the season is awesome. And he wasn't terrible against the run per Pro Football Focus, 71.1. He had 9 sacks, which led the team, and was credited with 42 hurries on the season. I think that's awesome, and I think that's going to draw him some draft attention come spring. Number 3. It didn't surprise me because I did do these grades every week and I knew who was grading out pretty well, but this guy had a really good season when he was able to get on the field, and that was Zy Alexander at cornerback. He graded out for the season an 82.2. He was very clearly LSU's top cover man. He missed some games due to that concussion. He was slowed in camp trying to come back from the knee injury, but his coverage grade on the year was 82.4. No one on LSU's roster was really close to that. It was significant, and I think with his size, his ranginess, I think an NFL team is going to like some of the things that they saw on tape from Zy Alexander this year. So good for him. He was the 3rd highest ranked player on this LSU team. 4th was an offensive lineman, and it wasn't Will Campbell, and it wasn't Emory Jones. Garrett Dellinger was the 4th highest rated player on LSU's team, 73.5. He, based on the grades, was an elite interior pass blocker for this LSU team. His pass blocking score was 84.6. That's actually higher than Will Campbell's, who was an 80.9. Dellinger allowed 3 hurries without giving up a single sack on 290 pass attempts. He obviously missed the final month of the season. He wasn't as good in the running game, and none of LSU's offensive linemen were. He was a 69.3 grade, but pass blocking was very much his strength, and he was a really, really good player for LSU there in the interior at left guard. And then number 5, this encouraged me because this is a guy that could stick around for a little bit longer. Caden Durham was the 5th highest rated player on LSU's team among those who were significant contributors. You didn't think in August that Caden Durham was going to factor into this very much. Josh Williams returns. John Emery returns. They're both 6th-year players. Caleb Jackson was a very trendy pick to be a breakout guy. And Caden Durham was fantastic. He busted onto the scene with that awesome game at South Carolina. He forced 8 missed tackles in that game. He finished the season forcing 27 missed tackles. He busted 17 runs of 10-plus yards, and his rushing grade was 76.2, all while nursing that toe injury for a lot of the season. So the pass blocking grade was not great a lot during the season, but, man, was the running production awesome. And I think Caden Durham's got all the makings of being a really high-level SEC back for the next couple of seasons. He was the 5th highest-ranked player. So from 1 to 5 on Pro Football Focus, Garrett Nussmeier, Bradyn Swinson, Zy Alexander, Garrett Dellinger, and Caden Durham. We go to the bottom 5. I don't want to spend too much time here, but I do think it's interesting information. And once again, Pro Football Focus is not, the end-all, be-all. They don't get every single thing right, but this is their interpretation of what they watched on tape from LSU. The lowest grade starting player or key contributor for LSU was Paul Mabenga, who obviously took over for Dellinger at the end of the season. He graded 46.8 on the year. I will say this from Mabenga. He really, really struggled his first 2 full-time games. Against Alabama, his game was 43.6. Against Florida, 46.3. So significantly under 50. The Vanderbilt grade was a 63.8. That was better. And I guess the good news for Paul Mabenga, he got 438 snaps this year. That's a lot of reps for a redshirt freshman player, and he can certainly build on that. Second lowest grade, DJ Chester, 50.6. I think that's the end of DJ Chester as a center. I do not believe it's the end of DJ Chester as an SEC starter. I think Braylon Moore takes the center spot in 2025, but Chester will be in the mix to play guard. His best game of the year was the last game of the year against Baylor. The issue for him was really he was consistently graded pretty mediocre in run blocking. It was always between 48.6 and 59.8, so always in the 50s. And the pass blocking went up and down. Against Alabama, 78.6 pass block. Against Arkansas, 73.8 pass block. Those are really good scores. He also was a 23.8 against South Carolina and a 49.1 against Florida. So he's 6'6", he's 315, he's got good size, he's got a year of starting experience. I think he's a piece of LSU's future moving forward. I just think he moves off the center spot. The third lowest ranked player didn't play a ton, but did play enough to qualify for the point of this story. Sean Washington, a defensive tackle of 56, was the lowest graded there on defense. And then you go to 4 and 5 that are hand in hand, because this is something we've talked about in August. This is something we very much talked about in September. This is something we talked about in October and November. And now that the portal is open and we're looking towards the 2025 season, you can absolutely point to safety, where Jordan Gilbert was the 4th lowest graded player and Major Burns was the 5th lowest graded player. Now, Gilbert played the majority of the season with a pretty significant shoulder injury. Major Burns was playing the star position. He actually had some pretty good pass rushing grades, just wasn't great in the other aspects of the game. But Jordan Gilbert, 56.9. Major Burns, 57.6. LSU just simply needs to be better at safety. They need to be better at safety in the run portion of the game. They need to be better at safety in the coverage portion of the game. Big plays are a concern. They've just got to do a better job. And if you were listening back in the first hour, I talked about some of the visitors they've got coming in. You've already got Mansour Delane committed. You've got Deshaun Spears coming up, even though he didn't play a lot late in the season. So they've got to do something to improve the talent level and to develop it a little bit more. And that's Jake Olson's main job back there as the safeties coach, because you just got to be better than LSU was this past year. And Brian Kelly said it on the record. This is not me sort of hypothesizing or pontificating based on what I see on the tape or what I've seen with my own eyes. This is the head coach of the team saying, we've just got to do a better job there. So the lowest 5 graded players on the team: Paul Mabenga, DJ Chester, Sean Washington, Jordan Gilbert, and Major Burns. If you'd like to read a little bit more in depth, I've got some more numbers to put behind it, or if you just would rather just read as opposed to listen to me, LouisianaSports.net. I've got a story up at the front of the site right now talking about Pro Football Focus grades for the entire season. Garrett Nussmeier, highest graded player on LSU's roster. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.